We have a wonderful guest, and it's such a pleasure to have this man back in the studio, sitting 4 feet across from me. That's about as wide as this desk is. We have Dr. Dennis Courtney, and Dr. Courtney is going to be discussing something that you need to have a pencil and paper to be able to write down and talk about, because you're hearing it first on Healthy Pets, Healthy People. Welcome, Dr. Courtney.
Thank you, Dr. Ed. It's really nice to be back in studio with you again.
Yeah, you know, Dr. Courtney, we take that for granted, evidently, because once it's denied, having that ability to actually be near somebody is amazing. Maybe we could start shaking hands and hugging people again. Who knows?
I'm ready for it.
But anyway, it is an important factor, and when it's being ripped from you, you miss what you don't have. That's for sure. You know, I had somebody stop by the house yesterday, and they were actually afraid to come in for some reason. You know, but I invited them in, and we sat and talked. It was wonderful. Anyway, to the point, Dr. Courtney. You have a wonderful treatment that you have available, and we're going to talk about that in detail. In fact, you're going to be back here on the 6th of June to continue this conversation. But I want to remind everybody that you're still offering services. You're still seeing people in your practice for joint issues with stem cells and exosomes. So tell our audience about what you're continuing to do, even during this restricted time.
Sure. Now, you know, Edmund, since 2015, I've been on a path of utilizing regenerative medicine. I've been on your air many times talking about how stem cells can regenerate brand new healthy tissue, albeit joints, and usually that has been a large part of my practice. Exosomes became a very integral part of my practice since July of 2019, all under the rubric, however, of people with degenerative diseases who are looking for another lease on life to remove pain and discomfort and all the other baggage that goes with having an arthritic joint or having something so terrible as COPD. And the list keeps going on and on and on. It wasn't until we were overtaken by this terrible virus that new uses for that same product, the one I've been using now for the longest time, falls right into the realm of this COVID-19 disaster debacle, and there's actually a way to either A, prevent, which is something I want to make sure I get the message across today to the listener, or B, cure those that may become afflicted in a way I never knew would be possible. I don't believe the company ever knew it would be possible. And now we're learning it's the FDA and the CDC that understand it's more than likely quite probable that this will be the use of this product.
Well, and that's the announcement that there is actually a treatment that's being tested now by the FDA that you've actually been doing in your office. So
well, I've been using it in other ways, you know. So
in fact, you're the only person in Pittsburgh that has this ability to do that.
It has to be this particular product. I think the next minutes or so, it'll be revealed why it's got to be this particular product from this particular company. But just to sort of recap, I think something we did in a previous show that led to this, Edmund, was the fact of the studies of those Wuhan women.
And we talked about that.
And we talked about that on the air. But for a listener that maybe wasn't on those shows, we got studies in January that came out of Wuhan, China. And we've all heard about Wuhan, have we not?
Well, we have.
This is where it all started. Anyway, these were studies, one involving 9 women, the other involving 33 women. All of these women were pregnant, and all of these women were COVID-19 positive. And by the way, they were extremely ill. What next occurred was they ultimately all delivered babies that were COVID-19 free.
In other words, during gestation, they were protected.
Well, certainly the question is, why did this happen this way? I mean, if the moms were so sick, they were sort of expecting that the children, more than likely, they're going to be affected. As it turns out, quite the opposite. In fact, worldwide now, it is understood that the virus cannot survive in an amnion environment. The key here is that amnion environment, this fluid that literally the baby floats in for 9 months. Evidently, and I don't think anybody knows for sure why, but evidently the virus cannot survive in that medium. And lo and behold, the company I'm involved with says, our product, the same product we've been talking about for many, many months here, you and I, comes from the amnion. I wonder, they said, I wonder if it would have any effect on this virus. And so they took a specimen, and they sent it out to be tested, and lo and behold, the COVID-19 that was tested in vitro, meaning in a petri dish, was completely extinguished and done away with by the...
You know, I personally, this is my personal opinion, this was all handled incorrectly. This virus impacts about 90% of the people, mildly to none at all. It does impact 10% of the people, and this is what everything is shown to be, who have comorbidities, who in my opinion, and I did a quick paper on this about low vitamin D3 levels, which are starting to show now, because I look for a common denominator, and that common denominator for elderly people, for people with comorbidities, people with dark skin, and people who are obese, all have low vitamin D levels, or like, for example, obese people, when that vitamin D3 is produced and converted, it gets absorbed into the fat tissue before it ever goes and does what it's supposed to do. So you look for a common denominator. None of this was done. We locked down society. We quarantined healthy people for no reason whatsoever. But for that 10% of the people, or even the people that have some concerns because of the fear factor that the PR groups and these Dr. Fauci and all these people threw at us, there is a treatment that is being studied by the FDA with this company, Organocell. And first of all, my first question to you is a virus a live pathogen?
That's very humorous, because we all look at it as something's alive, but from the very first time we've ever mentioned it here on your air, viruses are not alive. There is a package of RNA surrounded by a bilipid membrane that can overtake your own cells when they get through the mucosal membrane, and that mRNA starts to tell your RNA what to do, and it takes it over.
It takes it over. It's like a zombie inside the cell.
Exactly right.
So when I see all of this stuff about, kill this and kill that, we're not killing it. So I saw a commercial where a car company was spraying the inside of their brand new vehicles to be delivered now because our governor has allowed everybody to sell cars on the internet now. But anyway, they spray this antiseptic. It's useless because you're not killing it. Mechanical debridement will reduce the pathogen quantity. Spraying it does nothing. Am I right?
Well, interesting. If you sprayed soap instead of the antiseptic, the soap would have a better possibility of tearing down that lipid membrane. It's a fat. Than these very harsh chemicals very well might, because sometimes those chemicals will not penetrate that capsule.
A little bit of Dawn fights the grease. Huh?
Right. So, true hand washing, just by the mere fact that we have soap being used, 20 seconds, that'll do away with it. Mechanical
debridement. It reduces the amount of the pathogen. Okay. All right. So this cell, this organism that is not alive, even the FDA, the CDC rather, is saying that it isn't as viable as far as infection goes as we thought from surfaces. You can't get it so much from surfaces.
How about that one for a change, huh?
Yeah, I mean, masks are good, masks are not good. Gloves are good, gloves are not good. I don't know. Stay 6 feet apart. This is all insane in my opinion. And I'm giving you my opinion, not a medical opinion, my personal opinion. But anyway, if I'm concerned, or if I'm in that group, any of those groups, elderly, comorbidities, obese, have high pigment, have melanin in my skin. Is there this exosome treatment that can help prevent this virus getting into my cells and taking them over?
So my answer to that is absolutely yes. And so talking to me as a doctor, a guy that's been using this product and has seen the product, the very product I use, now demonstrate its ability to deactivate that virus. It didn't just catch my eye. It caught the eye, once again, of the FDA and the CDC. And because we are in a pandemic set of rules, we got the approval to get because all this does lead to now is your ability to study. And so we have an FDA-approved study going on, which will mean it'll take a while.
How long?
Well, the study is destined to end in September. So the public will have to wait until September, until the study comes to a conclusion. They write the report before they can be let in on the secret that I already know. I'm telling you, this organocell product has demonstrated the ability to deactivate the virus. It caught the attention of the FDA and the CDC, and because we're in a pandemic set of rules, it led to the approval of that study, but the public will have to wait, and so be it. I say, if you are vulnerable, and the very categories of people that you talked about a moment ago, the elderly, the obese, and the list goes on and on and on, then I am tired of hearing, in fact, one of the first things out of my mouth when we started this, I am tired of hearing from the little guy, Fauci, and the scarf lady, that you need to shelter in place and wash your hands. And so these elderlies are scared to death. They're entrapped in their own homes, washing their hands, and they're still to this very day being told, stay there. The rest of you are starting to work your way out of the house, but you can't do it because you're so vulnerable that you need to remain protected. I say to the listener today, so if it's you or the loved one who's in this category, there is something to do. That IV that I've been utilizing since July of 2019, turns out it looks like this is going to be a winner. The public won't know this until the study's completed.
So they're studying that now. They started out with in vitro, in other words, in a petri dish. Now, I know from my training that sometimes that doesn't translate to be effective in the body.
That's right. But
you already know that during pregnancy, from those studies that have already occurred early on, that amnion fluid is protecting. So there's probably a 99% chance that's going to be effective in the body as well.
And I'm glad you mentioned it. It has to be the entire amniotic soup. So I want to probably just take a moment. There are many companies out there that have exosomes, have them in the marketplace. The problem with them, essentially, I believe, threefold. Number one, those that are the exosomes that are retrieved from the amnion, it is the exosome only that's retrieved from the amnion without the remainder of the amniotic soup, let's say. The word soup means, that amniotic fluid has cytokines, growth factors, chemokines, there is a plethora of proteins in there, okay, that make the amnion what the amnion is.
So that's kind of like having a whole grain or multi-grain bread as opposed to a white wheat bread.
If you have the exosome only, you do not have the amnion environment. So right off the bat, any company that has exosomes, and there are companies out there, they don't have it with the soup. The second problem is that once they harvest the exosomes, they culture them instead of having filtered them to retrieve them.
So that changes them when you're
Well,
cultured.
what happens is it weakens them because they take a sample of the exosomes, they plate them, they grow them, and then they expand them. And the second generation essentially is doubled. And then they culture those and they expand those. About 6 or 7 generations out, that's where they harvest from. But this is now weakened. I think I used on our air one time a description of a caller mentioned where that's like making a cup of tea with the same tea bag. And by the time you get to the 4th and 5th and 6th cup, you don't have any tea. You have water. And that's exactly what you've got when you've got exosomes that have been cultured. So it's got to be filtered, not cultured. And then the third factor, which when you bring this one in, ultimately eliminates everybody else, Organocell is the only company that does not store and preserve the product in DMSO.
Which is a solvent.
Which is a solvent. And I can't answer why the other companies do this, why they then take the product after they've cultured it, which was a bad idea to begin with, but then they store it in DMSO and completely ruin any possibility of that stuff working. And so for those 3 reasons, it's only this Organocell company because it is the amniotic soup, and it's the reason that it was able to be so effective when Organocell sent it out to be tested in January, and when the FDA did the same and the CDC did the same, to find out that those viruses were rendered incapable of harm was what has now led to those studies. The public will share in the results, but I don't have to wait. I have the product available to me and has been available to me now for many, many months.
We're going to take a commercial break, Dennis, and we come back. Let's talk about how this is actually going to be a treatment.
I believe so.
Because we're talking about, they're pushing vaccinations because the pharmaceutical companies and, probably mostly owned by Bill Gates are going to make billions of dollars again on this, plus do damage to billions of people, millions of people as a result of getting a vaccination, in my opinion. We have a treatment. One of many, I think, because I think supporting your immune system is the biggest treatment. Anyway, Dr. Courtney, interestingly enough, the first exposure to this exosomes on this show, we talked about how it can grow hair by topical application.
Yes, we sure did.
So how's that going along?
Well, the side of my practice dealing with regenerative medicine is untouched in terms of it's my main focus. It always has been my main focus and will continue to be my main focus. Who knew that we were going to be invaded by a COVID virus like December and January that has led to this new pathway?
Dr. Fauci knew. He announced it in 2017, said that during this administration, Trump administration, we were going to be hit. So he has a crystal ball, I gather. But anyway, they're focusing on vaccinations. How terrible is that as we're learning. But these are RNA viruses, and there is really no effective RNA vaccination out there, first of all. Second of all, this virus isn't having the impact to require really a vaccination, in my opinion. When we use these exosomes, how are they administered?
So exosomes, and by the way, when the FDA created the protocol for the study, it can only be given IV, which makes complete sense. So the FDA understands that this is safe enough to be given IV. After all, we've been using an IV for as long as the company's been in existence anyway. So it's a 1 ml dose.
That's hardly anything.
1 ml. And of course, we're guaranteed that in 1 ml, there will be no less than 600 billion exosomes.
How many treatments?
The protocol was set up that there would be 3 treatments, okay, over a span of time, day 1, day 4, and day 8. But once again, that's a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized trial. We had an interesting change to this last week, however.
And this happened in Florida.
This happened in Florida because Organocell is located in Miami, but they applied for and received an immediate approval from the FDA to use the product on 2 patients who were on ventilators in a Miami hospital.
So when you're on ventilators, that's a sign you're at end of life.
These are elderly people that this was a bad situation. And so compassionate use was invoked. Under EUA, which is emergency use authorization, the FDA allowed these 2 patients to be treated with Organocell Flow. And as it stands right now, I understand that dose number 1 on day 1 and dose number 2 on day 4 have already been administered. Day 8, which will be the 3rd dose, will be administered by Monday. So we're talking about results that will be available to me next week that I hope to be able to announce the next time I come back, because this one you don't have to wait for. The study, which is placebo-controlled and the like, we're going to have to wait to find out how that works in terms of when the full research program comes to an end. But compassionate use on, admittedly, 2 patients. But 2 patients who I believe were moribund, who were destined to expire, or at least 80% of the elderlies who go to the step of being put on ventilators, 80% succumb while under mechanical ventilation.
So it sounds to me like these exosomes, and that's happening through this trial, are doing 2 things: stopping the virus from taking over the cell, and the second thing it seems to me that it's doing is stopping a hypercytokine response.
All because it's amnion and the whole nanoparticle soup of the amnion that we learned from the Wuhan study was the amniotic environment is inconsistent with allowing that virus to be virulent and survive it, and to be able to administer it to a human being seems to lead to the same possibility, or at least we're going to find out from the compassionate care study. Look, 2 people is not a study make, but I'm going to be impressed to learn what happened with those 2 people, and I'll be reporting that back here the next time we meet.
On the 6th of June, already June here. So people can go to clinicaltrials.gov. That's clinicaltrials.gov, and put in the identifier window this code, NCT04384445. That's N like Nancy, C like Charlie, T like Tom, 04384445. And they'll actually be able to see the study that's being conducted by the FDA by the Organocell, the product that you use in your office.
Oh, yeah. Both of these, by the way, that compassionate use has its own identifier, and the study that's going on until September has its own identifier. These are legitimate FDA-approved studies. One will be the randomized Dr. Fauci and correct science way. But the compassionate use, I believe, is going to be strong information to tell the public, look, we can't wait. If you're sitting around in a room, cloistered, and sheltered in place, you want to be able to come out.
Which is actually destroying your immune system.
Oh,
and this wearing of masks are destroying immune systems and can actually make you sick from your own viruses and bacteria that you're breathing in and out.
I've noticed with a jaundiced eye, you have a definite opinion on this, Ed, and it's coming out every time I hear you speak. I understand the anger and the disgust behind your voice. I'm equally disgusted, but I'm coming here with a message of hope. Besides my disgust, the fact that there is something that the public can do, especially if they need to do it.
And this is a message of hope. We are about education here. But, sometimes you get caught up in things and people become unaware or they become afraid to become aware. And they just want to put their head in the sands because we're overwhelmed with this all the time. I mean, I hear
tough.
this, these turbulent times, they have terms for it. And then they have terms like we're all in this together and the new normal. I don't want a new normal. The normal that we have has been working pretty well. I don't want this change. And if we sit back and accept it, we're going to have to live with it. And children are going to have to grow up with this oppression and suppression. And if I can have a voice to alert people and wake them up and allow them to understand that there are treatments out there supporting your immune system, eating properly, sleeping, staying hydrated. And then if there is an issue, we have people like Dr. Dennis Courtney that offer something here. They seem to be talking there. I mentioned last week, Dennis, I don't know if you heard the show, but there are 9 states, all with Democratic governors for some reason, who are talking about not opening up and having freedom again until there's a vaccine or cure. Well, that could take a year. That could take 2 years. Who knows? You want to be in lockdown? I mean, this is not China. This is not Russia. This is the United States of America.
They changed the rules, didn't they? It was to flatten the curve to begin with. Flatten the curve. This curve is flat now.
And that's a mistake, in all actuality, in flattening the curve. Everything they told us, no masks, no masks. It's nobody knows what to believe. And hopefully, I'm just here to enlighten, and you believe what you want to, but you need to research it. Just don't take anybody's words.
I know that people are very frightened.
Yes.
They're very frightened. I got that. But what I also see, and I don't think any of the listeners could ignore, the public is fed up. They've had enough. And there's more than just meager rumbling going on out there. They're ready to take this thing back. And I hate to see it, but these governors that have kept this thing up way beyond their usefulness are, I don't know how they can.
With threats and in fact, some of them have blood on their hands, in my opinion. They sent people from the hospitals to these nursing homes.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that.
I
knew you were going to say it. I knew you were going to say it, which is just terrible. I mean, common sense would say you should have never done that. How an intelligent group of people could ever think that was okay and be authoritarian about making sure it happened?
Because this elderly group and the comorbidity group were identified on the onset of this. That age group, 65 and older and so forth.
We learned that in Washington, right? Inslee out there had the first outbreak, and it was one nursing home, and it wiped out a lot of people. There it was. That was the first outbreak. You think maybe it had caught on here?
Yeah. This is not a political show. We have politicians come on. And there's a reason for that. And I hate politics. If I was younger, I'd probably run for it because I'm so upset about what's going on. But I'm not young enough to go out and do that now. But I am able, though, to voice an opinion and to educate. And what I saw here is there's no way you could separate politics and government and healthcare. They're intertwined. And so this show has to have some political bent to it, in my opinion. We're going to take a commercial break. We are here with hope. We have Dr. Dennis Courtney here offering a treatment in his office with
There is a solution to your health challenge and one that will allow you to avoid both surgery and prescription medications. Take the time to find out more about the fascinating and miraculous world of stem cells. You are invited to attend a free seminar. Reserve your seat now by calling 724-888-3088. That's 724-888-3088. Become empowered with Dr. Courtney. Call today, 724-888-3088. Tell them Dr. Ed sent you.
We are back with real hope and change here. Dr. Courtney, everybody that listens to this show knows what a stem cell is. There's no way you could not know if you listen to this show. And we've talked many times about an exosome. Please define to us what an exosome is.
Yeah, well, to tell you what an exosome is, just briefly mention what that stem cell is because they're so interrelated. You know, for years, almost 5 now, I've been treating with stem cells to regenerate mostly new joints, but other diseased body parts. What I didn't really mention at the time because I thought it was an excess amount of information that was a little bit of an overkill is that when a stem cell is doing that regeneration, it does so by releasing exosomes, which are pieces of RNA, mRNA, and miRNA inside of the cell that get packaged in a vesicle. And so when I learned, as I did in July of 2019, that there were companies that could harvest the exosomes all by themselves, I was learning that I could avoid the middleman and that I didn't need the stem cell as the delivery boy. I could actually get the exosomes all by themselves. And because the sheer number of them is so much exponentially higher than those that can be obtained when you deliver them through a stem cell, I immediately embraced the exosome because, well, how about this, Ed? When I was using stem cells, I said, and I to this very day say it, that vial was guaranteed there would be no less than 10 million stem cells. And inside of these stem cells were going to be exosomes, and maybe all told there would be 1 billion, 2 exosomes. But in a vial of exosomes that come from this company that we've been talking about here, I'm guaranteed no less than 400 to 600 billion exosomes. So can you see why now I've switched my emphasis? It's the sheer number.
So you administer this milliliter by IV. How long does that treatment take, that protocol?
Well,
I mean, I know we want 3 IVs over time.
I say now we switched to talking about the COVID.
Yeah, we're going to go back to that because it's so prominent right now because you're offering help and hope here.
I'm offering help and hope to those that are vulnerable and are looking for a way to take charge.
How long am I in your office for that treatment?
Yeah, this is. I mean, it takes 10 minutes to administer this IV. No different than when I used it for IV to treat COPD. We talked about that here many times on the show. The fact that COPD patients are someone that I've always treated, and I've used an IV administration to do that.
And what is this COVID-19 symptoms are lung symptoms.
And they're lung involved, and absolutely, if I want to get this throughout the body, I'm not going to do what I would do for somebody that had degenerative joints of the knee. I administer it into the knee or into the shoulder or into the hip. Yes, that's where the capsule resides, and I can get inside the capsule. But to treat body organs, my only route of administration is IV. And now with this COVID-19, the FDA study says this can only be administered, makes sense, IV. They've approved it to be done that way. In the compassionate use study that I mentioned that happened and still going on, that's IV. So, no, we're talking about a 10-minute IV in my office.
3 treatment protocol.
That is the treatment protocol to treat someone who is currently ill.
Currently ill. So as a preventative.
As a preventative, there is no 3 rule, okay? Now, it is true. I'm asked, well, how long does this good for? How long does this last? So if I do this, yes, I'm protected, but for how long? And honest, I don't know how long. Is it going to be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? I have a feeling it's not forever, and that if you remain vulnerable, you're going to want to continue this on an extended means, because if you're elderly, you're going to remain elderly. If you're a diabetic, you stay diabetic. If you've got those comorbidities, they're not going away. But the fact that you can take charge and put yourself and almost make yourself, I use the term bulletproof, would be such a good feeling to have. And so up till now, I've had 5 patients that have sought me out for the sheer purpose of being treated as a preventative for COVID-19. And I now make that same possibility available to whoever's listening to me today.
Because if the powers to be, Dr. Fauci, would allow people to get out and develop herd immunity, this virus would go by itself. Instead of the idea, or maybe what's behind all of this, is to get this mandated vaccinations, which never develops true herd immunity.
He's telling them to stay in.
Yeah, my opinion, get out and breathe the fresh air and greet somebody. Anyway, so if I called your office, what is that number?
Oh, 724-942-3002.
And what do I need to ask for?
Just say, look, you've heard mentioned that there's a treatment to prevent COVID-19, and you'd be interested in exploring that. Our phone rings off the hook when it comes to
and your wonderful receptionist, office manager, Kim. will
and
get
she'll
you scheduled.
direct them. Exactly.
So is there an age limit on this? In other words, too young, too old?
There is no age limit, obviously, but it's so nice to know that this particular product has a safety profile where there's no harm that can come to you. This is an inert substance. We've been using it for many, many months to years. How nice is it to be able to use something so powerful and yet not have to worry about harm that comes from its use?
So it's exosomes in a saline solution, most likely. Is that what it is?
It's in a saline solution without DMSO, that's for sure.
Yeah. As opposed to a vaccination, which is full of toxins and adjuvants.
The adjuvants themselves. Yeah. You and I have seen the list, and you've got Sherry Timpenny, who's my go-to person when it comes to vaccines. That woman, she was quite an educator of mine, and I understand she's one of your mentors as well as your audience.
Yeah, she is fantastic. She's educating people and making them aware as we're being lied to by the medical profession.
Well, she's going to have a resurgence of her demand because the vaccine thing has always been out there, but this one has now brought it to the...
Dr. Courtney, thank you so much. You're going to be back here June 6th to continue this conversation because we will have more information by that date.
I'll know about that compassionate use study and maybe more on how well things are going.
I want everybody to stay well, stay healthy, build that immune system. Give Dr. Courtney's a call if you're concerned about your health. We want you to be around, and we know there are groups that this is really impacting. Dr. Courtney at the Courtney Medical Group. Thank you so much, Dennis, for coming in. And good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ed.